Should public schools have discretion over whether to educate undocumented children? You don't often hear lawmakers say that they know the bill they're proposing is unconstitutional, but they're still going to push ahead anyway. That's where we're at.
I would anticipate would go back to the U.S. Supreme Court, and I like our chances this time around.
Representative William Lamberth says that he wants some clarity from the Supreme Court over how much discretion schools have, even if it means the state faces any number of lawsuits along the way. Lawsuits that we pay for, by the way. Some believe the Supreme Court got it wrong with Plyler versus Doe back in 1982. That's where justices said that denying a child a free public education just based on immigration status violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Republican lawmakers, however, argue that these school districts should have discretion over who they allow into their schools, especially if it costs taxpayers, some of whom would not feel comfortable with having to pay for the education of an undocumented child.
It costs funds, it costs money to educate that child.
Those against the bill say that public education is a right, no matter your immigration status.
Every Tennessean should be pissed off about this.
I know that this is wrong. You have to stand up and speak your mind.
Listen, I hope you understand I'm an immigrant. I didn't become a United States citizen until sometime between middle school and high school. Yeah. And even then, it was only because both of my parents became citizens. Before that, I went to school like anybody else, trying to get an education and eventually go to college so I could tell stories for a living, like what I'm doing right now. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are students out there who are just trying to get an education and aren't really focused on their immigration status, because the education part is the part that's guaranteed. I know what people are trying to say about not wanting to pay for a certain child's education, but I'm going to go back to the argument about school vouchers. There were a lot of parents out there who were not comfortable with the idea of paying for someone to send their children to private school, someone who could already afford to go to private school. That was a very divisive issue here in the state, and we ended up passing a law. And so the argument that, we shouldn't have to pay for certain children to end up going to school on taxpayer dime, we are paying for a number of students. Also, the argument of taxpayers paying for undocumented children to attend public schools, are we suggesting that undocumented people don't pay any taxes? I mean, you go to the grocery store here in Tennessee, there's a grocery tax, sales tax, whatever the tax may be. There are taxes that people pay just to live in the state of Tennessee. How much of that money goes directly to education, I'm not entirely sure, but to suggest that these parents are not paying for their kids to go to school and that responsibility falls solely on United States citizens or documented people, I don't know. I don't think that would be a fair argument to make.